2, 1. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to this week's episode of the Tesla Geek Show. I'm Eli.
And I'm Anwar back. On this week's episode, we've got the Model 3 refresh details coming up and limited FSD private beta set to release any day now. This week's episode of the Tesla Geek Show is brought to you by Matt Home of the Home Team in Austin. He's known as the Tesla Realtor in Austin. So if you guys are thinking of buying or selling real estate in Austin, make sure you give Matt a call. Matt's website is www.hometeamaustin.com. Home is spelled HOLM, teamaustin.com. You can also give him a call at 512-769-1695 or just shoot him an email at matt@mattsellsaustin.com. Matt, thanks for your sponsorship. All right, dude. Big news in the world of Model 3, the long-awaited Model 3 refresh, but I guess Elon says don't call it a refresh. Is there's been some leaks.
I actually feel like Fred's article on this was accurate. He's like, I know Elon doesn't like to call it a refresh, but I'm not sure what you want to call it. When Tesla makes multiple changes to the vehicle that involve multiple pieces of hardware and different functionalities all at the same time.
Yeah, and you guys know this, like people that follow Tesla closely, I believe like on any given week on multiple lines, Tesla is making at least a dozen changes, things that we don't notice, right? Like they just do it. It's a continuous improvement, which I think is amazing. But every once in a while, they'll do kind of like a little bit of a major update, which we would call a refresh, and I guess Elon wouldn't. But this thing, I mean, there's been rumors for weeks and weeks that Tesla is thinking of doing a Model 3 refresh. I mean, it's been a solid 3 years since anything major has been done to the Model 3 design. So let me run through it real quick, Eli, at a high level, and then we can kind of talk about, get some input from you about what you think. So basically, the little bit of background. I think this leak originally started by from Omar from Homars. He actually saw him on a podcast with somebody on YouTube recently. I forget the name of the podcast, but he kind of talked a little bit about it. That I guess he went to the Fremont, I think, factory and just spotted what he thought was this refreshed. They're calling it the 2021 model year, Model 3. So I'll just list from in order of importance, in my opinion, about the changes that are about to take place from what we're calling the 2020 Model 3 to the new refreshed 2021 Model 3. So I'll begin with the heat pump. So the same octo valve heat pump that's in the Model Y, we always thought that would come to Model 3. I believe that's going to be in there as well. So that would be a more efficient vehicle, better range, a new center console. Instead of a flip, it's more of like the sliding type console. And then power lift gate, like in the Model Y. And then people mentioned that they saw that the 19-inch sport rims might have been changed slightly. And then the other major thing that we will notice as customers of Model 3 is the chrome delete, like the matte black, kind of like what the Model Y has. It's got that, and then slight alterations to the headliner also. The upholstery that's inside of the vehicle, they're saying they noticed that it's a bit darker. And then supposedly the glass in the car is changed, where it's double pane, so that should improve sound isolation or insulation.
So I got to say, of all these changes, the one that I was surprised that the Tesla community was the most divided over was this center console. Oh my goodness. I saw hundreds and hundreds of tweets and responses flying about, I like it, I hate it. Mark Benton said it looks like a Chevy. And it was just all over the place. Like everybody had an opinion on the matter and everybody cared. And I was like, honestly, I don't give a shit. It's the center console. I think from the arguments I saw, I think the new console is actually a little bit better because I think that super glossy console at the angle it was. I had the glossy console in my original Model S. And that thing got dirty and scratched up like no other. So I think my net takeaway is it's an improvement. But it was pretty funny how hard people were going on Twitter about this for like 48 hours.
Yeah, so I'm in the not a fan camp. It's like I whenever if you guys want to go look it online, you'll see a picture of it. I guess nobody's really seen it yet, like up close and personal, but immediately I didn't really like the design of it. My model, and I drive like a standard range plus Model 3. I did I wasn't ever a fan of the piano black, the shiny, like it leaves a lot of fingerprint marks.
Yeah.
So I did get that wrapped at one point. Expel and Austin wrapped that for me, so I don't have any issues with my center console at this point. But yeah, I'm not a massive fan of the look of the new
So
console.
the reason why I really didn't, I fell into the DGAF camp is that I'm really in the camp of like the original 2014, 2015 Model S. I love the no center console. Like one of
Mm,
my buddies has one of those original cars, has no center console, and I love it. You can set your bags there, you can set stuff there, and instead I just have a bunch of crap shoved in where my cup holders are supposed to be. I never even put in the cup holders. I just
yeah,
store
yeah.
stuff in there. I'd rather there be no center console. So I'm in that camp.
Yeah, and also one thing that people aren't thinking about is in the Model 3, the current center console, like underneath where you put your phone, you can lift that. That's kind of like a little hinge, like a lid. And that's where there's like USB chargers and USB-C charger cables and all that. I believe what they're doing, the rumor mill at least, has been that like now that you can't access that area the way we used to be able to, we used to flip that first third and plug stuff in the USB drives, or even your what do you call it, like for Sentry mode, the USB drives and stuff would go in there. I think instead what they're going to do is, I think that's been moved to the glove compartment, is the stuff that I've been hearing, which actually is a much more elegant, simple solution. Because the thing that you're mainly afraid of, if somebody steals your car and they're aware of Tesla and they know that this thing has been recording on a USB drive, people can just access that area and take it out. But if you, in the recent update that Tesla did, actually, you have to have you can enable you can enter a pin in order to unlock the glove compartment. So I think that's kind of like two-level like authentication almost. So if your USB stick is in the glove compartment, and then you with software tell it to unlock only with a certain pin, you've essentially secured that USB drive with the memory of like if somebody is like stealing your car.
I love that added level of security because right now you're absolutely right. Even if somebody just did a smash and grab, it wouldn't take them very long to reach in, especially in the S, for example, and grab
Mm-hmm.
the USB stick sticking out right in the base of your center console there. So
Yeah.
putting it in the dash, I love that too. Also, too, when you put a car in valet, the valet guy could just unplug your USB and you have no idea what happened with your car. But
Yeah,
to be able to
that's a
pin
good
lock
point.
that into the dash, I think is a really elegant solution, exactly like you said.
Hmm. But you're totally right, dude. There has been a little bit of controversy. The Tesla community is split in half, basically. Some people think it's amazing, elegant, nice, like nice looking, and the other half, which I fit in, is I'm just like, not a big fan. But I think of the look, the design, I'm not a fan of. But I think it does make more sense, like logistically and the way things are set up. Um, I think the heat pump octo valve, that's not any kind of, I mean, that's going to be a warm welcome no matter what, right?
I think
Especially people that live in like cold climates, because we saw
exactly.
what the heat pump, the octo valve did to the efficiency of the Model Y, a car that's what 10-15% bigger, that had almost the exact same range as the Model 3. So I'm assuming what that means to Model 3, if it has that technology, is we're probably going to gain another 10 to 15% range, better range.
And most importantly, you're going to only lose a very little amount of range in cold weather, right?
Hmm.
Because that's where the Y had a huge leg up on the 3 is the heat pump gave the Model Y a tremendous advantage to be able to keep the battery warm without using near as much energy. Now
Hmm.
that's no longer the case. So that 30-40% range you lose in very cold temperatures is going to be 10% or less with the Tesla Model Y. And now the 3 once we have confirmed that it's got the heat pump.
Hmm. What about the power lift gate, like in the Model Y? I think that's also like a no-brainer. I think most people are going to appreciate that. Actually, our friends at Evanex, um, the I'm using their product actually for my front and trunk right now. They've got those the op- I don't know what they call them, but like
The
my front,
pneumatic,
my
yeah.
the pneumatic little levers or whatever, like my front and trunk, they open automatically basically whenever I press my buttons. But I think this power gate's actually going to be very, very welcome by Model 3 owners.
You know what? You just reminded me. I need to get those for my frunk because I hate that when I press my frunk unlock, I have to go and manually open it. Like it feels so
Yeah.
old school. I need to get that. That's a good idea.
Yeah. No, no, they're awesome, dude. Definitely go check that out. If you guys want to see what that looks like, go to evanx.com. You guys can see those products. Um, and then I'm not sure about this, like the 19-inch sports rim. Like I've seen pictures like where they're comparing the older one to the refreshed one. It seems like it's probably something improvements in aerodynamics, if anything. It's not a massive
It's
change. Like it's not
tiny.
something where you're gonna notice, but they definitely altered it somewhat. And people in the Tesla community definitely have a keen eye on these small changes. But the big change that you'll definitely notice when you start to see these refresh Model 3s driving around is the chrome delete, the matte black, kind of like the Model Y. I'm actually a huge fan of that. You guys know on my vehicle, on my Model 3, Expel of Austin did a stealth wrap on the entire car. But I think the thing aesthetically that makes it look like next level awesome is the chrome delete that they did on the door handles, and then like the paneling outside the windows and all that kind of stuff. I think that's going to be huge. It's going to look really nice.
I'm so with you, man. When I see the Ys, they already come Chrome deleted. I'm so jealous. Like, I'm sorry. I just, there's Chrome just doesn't do it for me. And it doesn't do it for a lot of people anymore either. I know there are people who still like their Chrome, but I feel like Chrome is something that was like my dad's car thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
having the chromed
Yeah.
out stuff was a big deal back then, or the chrome rims and all that. It's like, no, it's hard to keep clean. It gets scratched. Anything gets on it, a fingerprint. Yeah, the chrome deleted, the matte black or whatever it comes with, just looks so much better. That's probably what I'm going to end up doing to my Starship, or maybe I'll wait for my plaid ship.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, man, the chrome. I wonder. So now I'm going to wonder that are they going to buy base Chrome delete the future Plaid S, or are they going to keep it because maybe it's targeting a bit older audience and still likes Chrome? I wonder.
That's a good, interesting point. I know on the Model 3, especially the ones that come with aero wheels, it just clashes. The chrome on the like that's I remember when I first got my car, I didn't have the chrome delete, and I have the standard like aero wheels, the 18-inch aero wheels. So and those are dark, like a black color. So once I did the chrome delete on the rest of the car, it kind of matched it like brought everything in kind of. So I think that's going to be a warm welcome for the people that are buying like the I guess standard range vehicles without the wheel upgrades.
I completely agree. And then eventually we know Tesla's going to have a full on wrap service in house at Giga Austin, or
Mm-hmm.
Terra Austin, I guess. I got to stop calling it Giga, uh,
Yeah.
for the Cybertruck, because Tesla's going to actually offer some OEM wrap options. So I'm going to be interested to see how they scale that to other vehicles. And if Tesla eventually is like, you know what, we're bringing the wrap business in house, we're just going to grab even more margin around our cars, that'd be crazy.
Dude, that would be epic. They could totally partner up with Expel, even like bring, you know what I mean? Like the very last, especially in Austin. Imagine all these like stainless steel Cybertrucks. People are gonna want to customize them somewhat, right? It's not only, I don't know if it's really protecting the stainless steel. I don't think it's for that, but if you want to like just have like a different design, think about like camo or different, if you're into hunting and you want to take your Cybertruck out, like you could camo the whole fucking thing and
And the
I think it'll look pretty epic.
and the businesses that are going to wrap it as promos, because the Cybertruck is just a ridiculous attention grabber, especially when it first comes out. Yeah, man,
Yeah.
I agree.
Finally, the last couple of major changes are like on the inside of the vehicle. So, and I've got the same thing. You guys remember when the Model 3 first came out 3 years ago, the the internal headliner was that Alcantara, similar as in the Model S and the Model X, that dark. And then after, I want to say like a month and a half, 2 months, like only the first like 500 cars or 1,000 cars, Model 3s got that. They changed it to a lighter, non-Alcantara material. I don't know exactly the name of it, but it's like a very light. So if you got like black seats and kind of a dark design inside the car, it's almost like a clash. So what people are saying is that the headliner upholstery is now like slightly darker. So I think that'll aesthetically look better. But the massive change, at least for owners like me of Model 3, is the double pane glass. Model 3, that's the only, and I've driven, like my first car was a Model S, then Model X. So I was already used to, I guess, like the luxury of those vehicles. But one of the things that I've noticed is when I'm driving in my Model 3 on the highway, especially going above like 65, 70, there definitely is a massive difference between the S and the X sound insulation and the Model 3. Um, and I don't know if the double pane window is already in the Model Y or not, but I'm hoping this makes an improvement when it comes to sound insulation within the vehicle.
I've noticed that as well. When I'm flying down the highway in my my Raven S, it's pretty quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot more quiet since I switched to the all glass roof in my Raven S versus my original S that had the sunroof. That car got loud.
Mm-hmm.
You know, speaking one of the other things with the S changes, is Tesla just snuck this one in today, I believe it was. Yeah, this morning they lowered the price of the S and X by 5,000 each.
Oh wow!
So yeah, the
I didn't even hear about
performance,
that. This must have just happened.
it just happened.
Yeah,
The performance, they didn't announce it; it just updated on their website. The performance S,
interesting.
X, and base model S and X are now both $5,000 cheaper. And you know, I'm sure there's going to be articles coming out tomorrow trying to say this is a sign that Tesla has shrinking demand. It's not. Model S and X sales have stayed consistent, actually gone up
Mm-hmm.
slightly. Elon has said that the car, especially the X, was selling for more than was intended. And once they got their economies of scale and their production improved, they'd lower the price of the vehicles. He said that in the last earnings call. They're going to continue to
Mm-hmm.
lower prices as they can so they can sell these vehicles to as many people as possible.
Yeah.
Elon's mission is to get everyone in the world driving electric cars. And the more people he can make it affordable to do so, the faster that's going to happen.
Yeah, the major discussion that's been happening within the Tesla community this last week, especially with this Model 3 2021 refresh news, is the Osborne effect, right? So it's got Osborne effect. For those of you that haven't heard this terminology, is a kind of a social phenomenon when customers cancel or they defer their orders depending on like when new product news is announced, right? So Tesla, because they're not a traditional OEM, and like Ford and GM and these guys, you guys know, like what they do is they announce, here's the, and I hate how they do this. In the year 2020, they're selling like fucking 2022 Ram or whatever. I'm like, dude, like just, if is it made in 2020, call it the 2020. Why do you guys like,
Always drive me insane that like a year
yeah,
ahead of time they're selling the model. And I'm like, why don't you just call it this year's model?
yeah. So, but that, because Tesla handles it in a different way, again, like what we mentioned, Tesla every day, basically, they're making changes. And I think Elon's mentioned in any given week, the line that is making these vehicles has at least a dozen or so. I mean, it's not even like one or two. It's at least like half a dozen, if not a dozen changes, incrementally changing all the time. But every once in a while, they'll have these massive changes. And I'm talking about milestones when they went like Model S. You remember when they did the dual motor Model S? I think, do you remember MKBHD? His first Model S, I think he got like a performance dual motor and all that, but that's right before they I think like a month and a half later after he took delivery, they had autopilot 2.0 change.
Yeah.
Dude, imagine somebody that spent like 160,000 and like if you would have just waited like 4 weeks, he would have had the latest autopilot tech, like that kind of stuff. I mean, there's like situations like that that like really pisses people off, right? Because it's like, imagine, like, I'm sure some of our listeners are in this boat where like you just spent like years and years saving up to get your Model 3, right? And you ordered it this week, and you maybe you pick, or maybe even like 2 3 weeks ago, but now somebody that just by sheer luck orders it this week or next, I mean, they're getting all these refreshes, the updates that we talked about.
And let's talk about the autopilot 1.0 to 2.0 thing, because that one was a big deal. And
Mm-hmm.
and Tesla actually has changed their process since then, right? Because anybody who bought a 1.0 car ultimately kind of got a little bit burned that there was an end of life for that hardware and they no longer are improving that technology. And, you know,
Mm-hmm.
due to unforeseen circumstances, right? The split between Tesla and Mobileye was obviously not planned by Tesla when they went down that road. But now, as a result, from 2.0 on, now Tesla is promising the hardware retrofits all the way until you get to full self-driving, so that people aren't paranoid that something like that's going to happen again. So at least with autopilot, they've solved that problem because they're committed to keeping the same hardware in the car with the exception of the chip, which you're going to be able to swap out. Everything else is going to be a software upgrade. But you're absolutely right. There's things like this that like, and it's one of these things that like timing a technology company and when they're going to push out updates like Tesla is impossible. And Elon's made it that way. So they're not like Apple. They're not like legacy auto, which is one of the things of why I think Elon fights back against the word refresh, because he doesn't want people to think about Tesla in the terms of legacy auto of like, oh, I'm going to wait till the next year's model comes out, right? Like, it's not like, you know, they make a model car every year, make some slight changes, or legacy auto makes a slightly different body every year. Tesla doesn't do that. And although they do make a lot of changes on the line, they don't actually make changes that substantially affect the product that you're purchasing all that often, right? Yeah. So even if dozens of changes happen on the line in a period of 2 months, the car that was made 2 months ago versus my car at any given typical period is practically the same for all user purposes. But then you have something like this where Tesla's actually got a whole bunch of updates to the vehicle that looks like are being dumped in all at once. And yeah, how do you time that? You could have bought a Model 3 anytime since 2018 and it's been the same until right now. And all of a sudden it's not. So like, it's tough. It's tough. And it's got to be a bummer for the people who miss out on those things. And, you know, that those vehicles are going to have to be differentiated in some way, right? Because they're going to have a little bit lower resale value. But yeah, it's a bummer. And I think the big one that got a lot of people was people who had bought the performance Model S Ludicrous right before they dropped the Raven, only to see the price drop by $30,000 more. So like, I mean, that had to be those people had to have been like really pissed. And I remember, and they were. But what is Tesla supposed to do? Not lower their prices or lower them more gradually just to not upset the past? I mean, I think we're kind of past that now and where Tesla is in their arc, especially since the majority of their sales are no longer S and X. It's primarily Model 3 and Y. I think for some people this will sting, but I don't think it's going to be as big of an impact as the difference of 30 grand.
Yeah. And another major milestone is one we just went through with Battery Day, right? Like, I know a lot of my friends that were like, they're ready basically to upgrade to a certain Model S or Model 3. And they're like, well, let me wait. Like, let's see what Elon says during Battery Day, right? So Elon, taking this Osborne effect into account, I think really downplayed the impact of Battery Day technology on the future lineup, right? Because he made it, I don't know, he kind of like, he basically was like, oh, the 4680s, that's like 2 years out. We haven't quite figured that out. And then a week or two later, he's tweeting that Berlin Gigafactory is basically going to be producing 4680 cells going into the Model Y. We know for 100% fact, Gigatech is going to have 4680s because the Cybertruck and the Semi are going to be made there.
Yep.
Like, and that's not that far out, dude. This isn't 2 years out. Giga Berlin, I believe, is like June or something. Expected production out of there is June of 21.
Yep.
And Giga Texas is 6 months later, sometime like December of 21, or maybe worst case scenario of Q1 of 22. These aren't things that are so far out. So if you're a person that doesn't own a Tesla right now, but you're ready for one, this is that question. Like, do you wait a year?
And here's my take on that. Unless you're waiting for a Cybertruck or a Semi, which I know a handful of people are, including our friends Zach and Jesse at Now You Know, they're actually buying a Semi. They already have a pre-order in from the very beginning. Unless you're waiting for one of those vehicles, the answer is no. And this was my prediction and exactly what Elon kind of said in Battery Day, which is they are not going to be taking over their existing partnerships, battery manufacturing. In fact, they're going to be increasing the amount of batteries they make with their partners on top of manufacturing their new cells, because trying for Tesla to go, I mean, they have a ton of cells to make to even meet the demand of Cybertruck, Semi, and Roadster. Like, they need an entire supply for that they're going to manufacture themselves. It's going to be quite a while before they've scaled up enough battery production and have a large enough supply chain to be able to produce on a daily basis the amount of batteries they would need to retrofit the S, the X, or even if they just went to the 3 and the Y. That's a ton of batteries. And they'd also have to redo the manufacturing at a number of different factories. They'd have to go to this new pack design, this new casting. There's a lot of things that have to happen on top of the battery supply problem and the scale problem that I think we are several years away from 3 or Y having these new type battery cells in the US.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is people are like, I see these predictions on Twitter, like, oh, the Berlin Model Y is going to have 500 miles of range and be the same price. No, it's not. Tesla is not going to sell a version of the Model Y that is exponentially better than the version of the Model S. So you're going to have a riot from US customers. It'd be a very bad move from the brand. You're going to have people not wanting to buy US cars. They're going to be trying to import them from Germany. You're going to have all sorts of crazy shenanigans happening that Elon Musk is very much against. So I think even when they do start putting these cells into the cars, unless they can simultaneously show the same improvements to the US made Model Ys and Model 3s, I don't see any way that happens. In fact, what I'll see I think what Tesla will do is they will just have less total battery cells in the vehicle, which allows them to have larger profit margins on the car. And if you're an investor, that's a really great thing to hear.
Yeah. One thing that we really didn't catch initially is the Cybertruck event actually was Battery Day Part 1, right? Because all of us, I remember, like, we didn't think too much about it, but he announced this massive, bigger car with all this, you know what I mean? All this tech. And
actually one of my takes on our post Cybertruck episode, by the way. It's one of the exact things I said. It's got to be based on a cell chemistry that doesn't yet exist.
Doesn't exist. Yeah, that's totally what it was. Because how do you make that car for $40,000, the base one? You have to have new technology. Like they knew back then that they figured. I mean, honestly, the Cybertruck was designed with 4680s in mind, right? There's no way they're thinking 2170 and then later, like, the entire structural rigidity, everything that we heard at Battery Day, that shit was already done when we unveiled Cybertruck last year.
It was. And let's go even a year further back to the Roadster. We knew the Roadster, like, people are like, oh, it's just going to have 2 Model S packs, 100 kilowatt packs stacked. No chance. That vehicle is smaller than the Model S. And if you add that much weight, you're going to lose the ability for that type of a performance and acceleration. So we even knew going back to the Roadster that the Roadster was going to be based on technology that they had in development. And very clearly it was early in development because the Roadster is now a few years late, and it's obviously going to have to be because the battery cells are still in development. But yeah, no, I think it's clear that the last 3 vehicles they unveiled, the Semi, Roadster, and Cybertruck, are all based upon battery tech that we were waiting for. And now we got to find out on Battery Day that, like, it's almost here. And not by almost here, meaning they're already producing cells out of their factory for test, and they're working towards figuring out the final engineering components for volume production.
Yeah. And it all, now that I think about hindsight, at least, everything kind of makes sense to me with the Gigafactory expansions and all that. So imagine this. So the Roadrunner Pilot 4680 cell line in Fremont, that's actually going to be used for Roadster, right? And then the Plaid Model S. So next, Berlin Gigafactory, and Elon's already said that they're going to be making 4680s in-house there. That's going to be for Berlin, I think, is specifically for Model 3 and Model Y, right, for the most part?
Yes, and you actually just made me think about a question. So if they're going to ship the Plaid S out of Fremont a year from now, that means they're going to have figured out this full body casting for the S, because the entire new cell design is this entire pack cell structural piece. You can't just, there is no longer just a pack to throw onto the existing car. It's now a new body. It has to, like, it's no longer compatible. These batteries, it's not a pack. So, like, you're right. So that means they're going to have to do a pretty substantial retrofit to Fremont. I wonder if this Plaid is going to ship on time. Now I'm starting to wonder if Plaid is, like, destined to be late.
You think so?
Well, I mean, do we really think they're going to get that, the Model S, all that? I mean, they can, I guess. But that's a pretty substantial change. And then are they going to build that and just run the Plaid cars through that? Because obviously they're not going to be running all the S's and X's through that, I don't think. I don't think they're going to have the batteries for it. Maybe they will. I don't know.
And then, so Berlin Gigafactory, again, we know that the 4680s will be made out of there, and they're going to be going into the European Model 3 and Model Y. And then finally, this one, the Austin was a no-brainer. Terra, Texas, Giga Texas, whatever you want to call it, literally is producing Cybertruck, the Semi, as primarily the vehicles coming out of that factory. And Elon's 100% stated that the 4680s are going into those vehicles, right? and then Model Y for the East Coast. So all of those, I think Giga Texas from the beginning is going to be a battery line, or it's going to have 4680 battery line in mind when they're constructing it right now in my backyard.
Real quick, guys, before we run out of time on this episode, I want to show you guys something. So I had this made because I had one made for my daughter, and a lot of other people asked me for these. If you want to get a suit so your kid can dress up like Starman or their favorite SpaceX astronaut for Halloween, I've made them. You can order one at starmansuits.com. We have them in sizes from 2T all the way up to 9C. Anwar Beck's cousin's got one, I think, that just arrived at his house the other day. These things are
Yeah,
fantastic. And if you use the discount code Tesla Geeks, they're $20 off.
dude, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm excited. Actually, Eli sent one to my nephew, Zane. That's my brother's son. I'm super excited for Zane to try this on. Like, he's into space and, Tesla and technology. So I'm very, very excited for him to try it on, man.
Have him send me photos when he gets it. I think it should have got there yesterday, or today.
Definitely, definitely. All right, let's wrap up the episode by talking about something that Elon announced on Twitter, which is that I think next week, so this should be at the latest the last week of October, limited FSD full self-driving private beta is going to be released. And just as a reminder, this is that massive. He's mentioned this before, that a significant fundamental rewrite of the Tesla autopilot system is being worked on by Tesla for the past several months. And Elon has alluded to the fact that, like, the current code, everything that's in autopilot, he called it 2D, maximum 3D. And he said that this new rewrite, instead of like still pictures or two-dimensional X and Y, that is based on video, or what he calls 4D. So you've got X, Y, and Z, the coordinates in 3 dimensions. And then on top of that, they're adding time. So it becomes kind of like a video equivalent. And Elon's mentioned that it's like between what they're working on, this 2D version of full self-driving and this 4D, he said, is a quantum leap. It's something that the Tesla community has been waiting on for months and months. And this is the same
Years.
years. And Elon has mentioned before that the alpha prototype, he's actually driving right now. And he said that, like, he can leave his house and his car, the alpha prototype of this new full self-driving update, will drive him all the way to work with hardly any intervention. So that is what they were talking about. So as early as next week, the limited private beta version of this, I don't know if Eli, you might be one of these people that's going to get it or not. No?
Not that early. No way.
Okay.
Honestly, I have a feeling that most of the people being put on this list either are actual employees at Tesla at this early that like are just on other teams, because there's people I know of at Tesla that are like very early testers who work there, but they're not on the autopilot team, so they're considered outsiders from the group, or a handful of people that are so closely affiliated with Tesla they might as well be employees. And I don't mean people like you and me. I think this is their normal super insider test group. I think this announcement is just so it can stay on track with, we're going to release the first people. I think they're barely going to get this out by the end of the year, barely, because like there's always like, the last 5% of issues take the most amount of time, and that's where they're at, right? They're at the final fixing. And when they push this out, it's got to be good, right? Tesla's a huge brand. When this new full self-driving update comes out, at the places they allow it to operate, it's got to be super effective. And expectations for this are very high, right? We haven't seen a substantial improvement to autopilot in a year plus. It's been over a year since I've had something change that I was like, okay, yeah, man, that's really game changing. The stoplight stuff is pretty cool, but it doesn't do turns or anything like that yet. So it still is pretty limited in its actual functionality. This is advertised and is expected to be a huge step change. And if it is, it's going to have huge positive implications for everyone who bought FSD, that their investment wasn't crazy, which I bought it, both of my cars. And more importantly for the stock, because if this feature really is a huge improvement, FSD is going to be selling like gangbusters.
Yeah. I mean, if there's any types of leaks that this is actually what Elon is talking about, a fundamental architectural rewrite, and just, head over heels better than what it was before, that would definitely,
I'll tell you what it does tell us. The way they had done it before was never going to work. And once Elon kind of explained it, it made sense why. That
Mhm.
basically autopilot was only looking at things from the last handful of frames, and it wasn't actually like it wasn't doing amount of like he described it as 4D processing. So yeah, I'm excited, man.
And you use FSD. I mean, when I went and visited you guys in California, you trust your FSD, I feel like, for the most part.
We probably
What
shouldn't
are
tell the internet how much I trust it or people.
Yeah, seriously.
But yeah, I trust it.
But I'm assuming, like, what are areas that you see a massive improvement being made? Is it around stoplights? Is it the turns? Like,
It's
I
everything.
mean, if you're on a highway,
It's
yeah,
total detection. So it's not going to be so much highway. It's going to be side streets. This is the big
okay,
change that needs to happen. Total detection of objects, tracking of objects. The vehicle's got to stop phantom braking, meaning seeing shadows as cars or walls. It's just a much better processing system where it looks at the world and accurately identifies more objects in real time in motion, which then in turn should allow this vehicle to actually successfully make turns, navigate more situations, and require human intervention even less.
yeah,
All right. So funny
epic.
enough, interesting timing. I've got to run to end this episode because sitting outside is my Uber ride to take me to Tesla to go get my loaner car. My car is currently being worked on. Some weird software glitch involving my suspension that they're fixing, but Tesla's taking care of me. But I just want to say to everyone, thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Tesla Geek Show.